Chapter 921, Cultural Lesson. When Lu Yizhao was pulled away by Zhang Weiyu and the rest, Lu Shu thought Zhang Weiyu would clarify the matter. However, after looking at Lu Yizhao, who had a determined expression, he suddenly realized that it was impossible to clear the matter. Lu Yizhao was very intelligent. Because of his intelligence, he was able to make connections of the minute details and coincidences. If it was Li Haitan, he would not think about that at all. Moreover, because of his intelligence and confidence, he believed in his own judgment and deduction and did not believe in what others said. The main point was firstly, Zhang Weiyu and the rest had fooled Lu Yizhao once. Secondly, Zhang Weiyu and the rest had difficulties explaining the coincidence. Wasn't that a coincidence? Zhang Weiyu was thinking about how he bumped into Lu Shu in the Qinglu Mountain. Lu Yizhao said calmly to Lu Shu, "Please accept my request to become your slave. Only then would everyone believe that I had always been loyal to you." Lu Shu said in an annoyed manner, "Come, listen to my explanation. There is probably some misunderstanding between the both of us. Moreover, I will definitely not accept you as a slave. I don't think it's a good idea." Lu Yizhao's eyes lit up. Back in those days, the King of Gods also did not accept any slaves, and none of the Imperial Dragon soldiers were slaves. Wasn't this a repeat of history? He asked, "Then how did you manage to control the Weiwu army?" Lu Shu said, "By the Treaty of Alliance. None of them are my slaves." Back then, Imperial Dragon soldiers also signed the Treaty of Alliance. Oh no. We are doomed. Zhang Weiyu and the rest started to grow desperate when they heard Lu Shu from a distance away. It got F*King more and more difficult to explain. Lu Yizhao activated the spell of the Treaty of Alliance by kneeling on one knee. "Please accept my Treaty of Alliance." Lu Shu thought about how frustrated Lu Yizhao would be once he found out that it was a misunderstanding after Lu Shu accepted Lu Yizhao as his man. What should he do? "Accept it," said Zhang Weiyu helplessly. The Treaty of Alliance could be nullified. Zhang Weiyu's idea was to let Lu Shu accept it first or the drama would not end. Now that the Weiwu army was able to recruit a rank 1 expert like Lu Yizhao, they would grow immensely in strength when they joined forces with the Qingxai army. Although this was frustrating, Zhang Weiyu thought that the truth would be out eventually. Since Lu Shu was not evil, everything would be fine when Lu Shu nullifies the Treaty of Alliance. Then, the Qingxai army and Weiwu army suddenly came to a compromise. Lu Yizhao flew back to the Tunyun Mountains where the Qingxai army was and brought over 1,000 of the soldiers over to the Qinglu Mountain, so each of them could sign the Treaty of Alliance with Lu Shu. Lu Shu was stunned. "We are so casual about this?" He felt that Lu Yizhao was rushing to hand the Qingxai army over to him. In fact, that was precisely what Lu Yizhao wanted to do. He had waited at Nanging City painstakingly for the day to utilize the army once he achieved prosperity and honor. However, unfortunately, the Qingxai army was only left with over 1,000 people. The soldiers of the Qingxai army were stunned too. Lu Yizhao had never mentioned his responsibilities. Yet now, Lu Yizhao was telling them that Lu Shu would be everyone's king from now on and nobody could disobey Lu Shu. Lu Yizhao was explaining to the soldiers of the Qingxai army seriously and the soldiers realized that their commander was not kidding. Lu Yizhao seemed to look up to Lu Shu a lot. At this moment, Lu Yizhao was still telling the soldiers, "You will eventually thank me for making this decision and understand how much honor you will have in the future." This sentence caused the soldiers of the Qingxai army to be confused. Why was their commander so naggy today? Zhang Weiyu sighed upon seeing this. This chap is still as naggy as before. Lu Yizhao suddenly looked at Zhang Weiyu. "Sir Zhang, don't be stingy, the Qingxai army needs some tactics too. Many of the soldiers have been stuck for 7 or 8 years, would you please save them?" Teach. Zhang Weiyu waved his hands helplessly. Actually, he knew that if Lu Yizhao was his man, the Qingxai army would be their sister army. Now that everyone became the sister of Lu Shu, he could only pray that Lu Shu could help everyone in the future. Then, Lu Yizhao initiated the request of mixing the Qingxai army with the Weiwu army. From now on, the Qingxai army would disappear and only the Weiwu army remained. Lu Shu felt that the merger of the two armies would be a long process as Qingxai army had their own spirit and strangers always lacked trust. It was as though a student entered a new class or a new employee entered a new company. It was definitely awkward to begin with. However, Lu Shu felt that the threat that the Black Feather Army brought was too great and urgent that the Qingxai army had to merge into the Weiwu army as quickly as possible. Therefore, Lu Shu called for Zhang Weiyu, Li Haiten, Lu Qianji and Lu Yizhao to discuss a strategy. This was when he suddenly felt like a commander. However, Zhang Weiyu did not mention the merger of the Qingxai army. Instead, he analyzed to Lu Shu, since the Black Feather Army had always been spying after the Qingxai army, they definitely know that the Qingxai army had entered this mountain. The priority of the Black Feather Army is the attack on Liyang Pass and Weibei Pass and therefore may not focus on us yet. However, after their attack, they would definitely target the Qingxai army and head to where they are currently hiding at. Therefore, the previously said period of 6 months probably has to be pushed forward. Lu Shu was stunned for a moment before turning to Lu Yizhao and asked, "Do you think the Black Feather Army can attack the Liyang Pass and Weibei Pass successfully?" Yes, Lu Yizhao confirmed, the Black Feather Army came prepared and the people of the Liyang Pass and Weibei Pass are not united. Although there was the danger of the trap, the Rank 1 experts are still in the North Capital and did not participate in this battle. The Black Feather Army, on the other hand, has their Rank 1 experts in the army and they even became the commanders. I think you can send a letter to the commander of the Weibei Pass to tell him that you will distract the Black Feather Army. However, the commander of the Weiwu army had already died and you will need the officially approved title of a commander. At this moment, the Weibei Pass will do anything for someone to distract the Black Feather Army and will definitely help you solve this problem. You just have to put the name of the soldiers of the Qingxai army into the name booklet and hand it over, Lu Yizhao added. This is a golden opportunity. If you want to secure the title of the commander of the Weiwu army after the battle ends, you will have to pay a heavier price. Lu Shu nodded. Lu Yizhao was intelligent and managed to think of a solution for Lu Shu to resolve the problem of his awkward identity. As he hid in the mountains, the title of the commander of the Weiwu army was always self-declared and was not recognized by the officials. Moreover, they were just making up an excuse of distracting the Black Feather Army. Being in the Qinglu Mountain, who could hurt him? How long does the Black Feather Army need to attack Weibei Pass? Asked Lu Shu. 3 months. Lu Yizhao said with certainty. At this moment, Zhang Weiyu said, "King, since time is so tight, shouldn't we stop the cultural lessons and put the combat training as priority?" Lu Shu said anxiously, "No. No way." When everyone began to discuss about how to merge the Qingxai army into the Weiwu army, Lu Shu said softly to Xiaoyu, "Is Zhang Weiyu mad? Since when did the physical education teacher take over the cultural lessons?" Lu Xiaoyu was speechless. Chapter 922, Robbery. Cultural lessons were necessary. If not, where would distress points come from? But since these cultural lessons took up time, the training that was carried out in the remaining time had to be of sufficient intensity in order to fulfill Zhang Weiyu's plan of completely training the army in 3 months. If they did not do so, once the Black Feather Army was done with Weibei Pass and focused their attention on rectifying this area, the Qinglu Mountain would have to face battles without rest. Zhang Weiyu could only hope that before the Weiwu army crumbled, the north region would be able to launch a counterattack. If not, even if the Weiwu army had become stronger, they would not be able to stop a few 100,000 soldiers from the Black Feather Army. Of course, the Black Feather Army could not send all their manpower here. After all, they definitely needed people to guard Weibei Pass and prevent an attack from the north region. But even then, it was very dangerous. Lu Shu trained his swordplay all day. It was as if he would not walk out of the limestone cave unless a major incident occurred. Lu Yizhao sighed with emotion. As expected. The king is sturdier than us. I didn't have that strength back when I was training. Zhang Weiyu rolled his eyes. He could not be bothered to deal with him. He completely could not understand the situation. He could only wait for the true king to appear. When Li Haitan saw Zhang Weiyu rolling his eyes, he raised his sword. Do you have anything to say about the Great Lord? Zhang Weiyu was speechless. Ha! 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 Very good. All of you were very loyal. Zhang Weiyu looked at the Weiwu army. Even at a crucial time like this, they were still attending cultural lessons. He could not stand it. He ran into the limestone caves to find Lu Shu. He had just entered the limestone cave when he saw the new sword marks on the walls. He almost fainted to the ground. Zhang Weiyu retreated in a flurry. He did not expect that in the few days he had not entered the cave, the sword marks on the walls had become even more amazing. He could not even glance at them. Hey, come out. I'm not going in, roared Zhang Weiyu from outside the cave. Not long after, Lu Shu walked out with a smile. What's wrong? Zhang Weiyu looked at Lu Shu with some hesitation. Have you advanced again? That's right. I've advanced to rank 3. Lu Shu replied. There was nothing to hide. He had simply advanced to rank 3. But he did not know how much of a shock this was to Zhang Weiyu. Back then, they felt that Lu Shu was advancing too quickly. It did not make sense. Thus, they took note every time Lu Shu advanced. At first, Zhang Weiyu and the rest thought that Lu Shu would advance again in 3 months. After all, Lu Shu was not like the Weiwu army and the Qingxai army. His strength was not stuck in a bottleneck. But Lu Shu did not even take 3 months. He had advanced from rank 4 to rank 3 in less than 1 month. Why did it feel as if he was accelerating on top of speeding up? But Zhang Weiyu did not know that to Lu Shu, it was as if a mini version of the same game had been released. He had thought that it would take him some time to advance to rank 3, but he realized that his progress was growing faster and faster. It was as if success had come naturally. What are you here for? Lu Shu asked curiously. If it is about the cultural classes, then forget about it. It was uncertain when Lu Shu could advance to rank 2. He might even reach rank 1. It was time for him to earn a huge wave of distress points. How could he relax here? When Zhang Weiyu realized that his aim had been completely crushed, he almost choked. Then what about the grains? What do we do about the grains? Back then, you said that we had to save up on grains. But you allowed the Weiwu army to settle it by themselves. What do we do now? There's not enough to eat. Wait, let go of me. Zhang Weiyu was carried away by Lu Yizhao and Li Haitan, who were supporting him on both sides. On the way, Lu Yizhao said calmly, Lord Zhang, you have helped the king to ascend to the throne. Please do not oppose him. Zhang Weiyu said, What? I should have killed you at the palace back then, you idiot. Let go of me. What were you talking about? Helped him to ascend to the throne? All of that was fake. Gradually, Zhang Weiyu stopped struggling. His expression looked as if he had nothing left to live for. Lu Shu stood on the Qinglu mountain, looking formidable and mighty. It was great to have underlings. But he was also panicking over the problem of food. However, it was not a major problem. Lu Xiaoyu already had notes. Before she left, Lu Shu even told Lu Xiaoyu that since they had money, she should do her best to buy the grains. On one hand, Lu Shu was not a mass murderer. Although he had become the head of the bandits, he did not want to resolve everything with violence. On the other hand, he was worried that Wei Bei Pass was being guarded by experts. Although there were not as many of them as the Black Feather Army, if more than 2 rank 1s had their eyes on Xiaoyu, it would be very inconvenient. Furthermore, Lu Yizhao had to represent the Weiwu army and appoint him as the commander of the Weiwu army. Lu Shu did not want any problems to happen during this critical moment. Lu Xiaoyu waved her hand. I won't fight anyone. Although Lu Xiaoyu had agreed, Lu Shu could not be at ease. At first, Lu Yizhao had only taken out half of his savings. But after he had pledged loyalty, he had taken out all his savings. After all, Lu Yizhao had been saving up money for this day. But he did not have much savings. Lu Shu was slightly curious. As the head of Nanjing City and the commander of the Qingxai army, how did he only have a few 100,000 notes after saving up for more than 10 years? Lu Yizhao explained that he was not willing to cause too much disturbance to the people. He was not willing to embezzle the salaries of the soldiers. There were even times when he used his own money so that they could afford to pay the soldiers and purchase equipment for them. After hearing this, Lu Shu was not surprised that the Qingxai army was so loyal to him. He was truly stronger than Yi Xiaoming, the previous commander of the Weiwu army. A few 100,000 notes did not seem like a small amount of money. They could buy a few 100,000 kilograms of rice. But the problem was, they had to feed over 5,000 mouths. Even Xiaoyu's invisible storage equipment was not enough to store all of this. She had to make multiple trips. Lu Xiaoyu brought the bishop and Anthony to the city within 150 kilometers of Weibei Pass to buy food. After asking around, she found out that the grains in the city had all been taken by the Longmeng army in Weibei Pass. It was said that spies had appeared in Weibei Pass. A fire had destroyed all the grains in Weibei Pass. Thus, they transported grains from the neighboring cities. From this, they could infer the Black Feather Army's plan. The Black Feather Army had prepared for a very long time for today's battle. The cashier at the grains store frowned. Young lady, it's not that we don't want to sell you any grains, but the entire city is out of grains. The vehicles from Longmeng Army have just come to transport grains. I don't think that they're very far away. When Lu Xiaoyu heard this, her eyes lit up. Which direction did they travel in? The Longmeng army was traveling towards Weibei Pass to transport the grains. Suddenly, someone shouted, "Where is my transport carriage?" My huge transport carriage with grains disappeared. Chapter 923, Where did you hide our grain transport carriages? The fleet of vehicles, that stretched over 1,000 meters, stopped and looked back. To their shock, they discovered that the carriage at the very end of the fleet was sinking into the ground. The ground was like the surface of the water. Thump. The carriage fell into the ground and disappeared. Furthermore, the number of disappearing carriages increased. There was no sign of them stopping. The soldiers from the Longmeng army hurriedly protected their carriages. They had not even understood what was happening. They wanted to greet their enemies with an attack, but they could not even see their enemy. In the end, when over 30 carriages disappeared, the rank 2 commander of the Longmeng army shouted, "I'm afraid that the Black Feather Army has made their move. Everyone to be on guard. Lift the carriages away from the floor." At that moment, the Longmeng army lifted up the remaining 20 carriages. They finally prevented the carriages from disappearing. Lu Xiaoyu could drag these people into the ground along with the carriages, but Lu Shu specifically told her not to kill anyone. Her space ring could not hold much more either. Lu Xiaoyu turned and left. The soldiers of the Longmeng army realized that this was an effective measure. They started to praise their commander. Our commander is so wise. To the Longmeng army, who else would steal grains other than the Black Feather Army? There were techniques in this world that allowed one to hide in the ground, but very few people possessed this technique. It was said that an aristocrat in the Black Feather Army had this technique. Lu Shu was in the limestone caves of King Lu Mountain training his swordplay. He discovered that Lu Xiaoyu had earned a large amount of distress points. The distress points were in the hundreds. Lu Shu suddenly felt that the rate at which Lu Xiaoyu earned distress points was just as fast as him. On the path north of Weibei Pass, 5 people quietly sat in a row on the tree branches. They closed their eyes and rested. Suddenly, there was the galloping of horses. The 5 of them opened their eyes at the same time. "They're here. Attack and run immediately," said the leader. "The commander is determined to take Weibei Pass. We cannot let our guard down." "Understood," said the remaining 4 people in unison. These 5 people were the most elite scouts in the Black Feather Army. One of them was a rank 2 expert. Although they were called scouts, they were different from the scouts that were typically in the front of the army. Their responsibility was to infiltrate the area and complete their tasks. They were the ones responsible for the burning of grains in Weibei Pass. They had been lying in ambush in Weibei Pass for a full 5 years. When the Black Feather Army arrived this morning, they dealt Weibei Pass a decisive blow. However, they knew that even if they had destroyed all the grains in Weibei Pass, the Long Meng Army had the right to obtain grains from the 5 neighboring cities. Thus, after they had dealt with Weibei Pass, the 5 of them hid nearby and waited for the transport fleet to come. Since they wanted to start an aggressive attack, they had to break off their opponent's foundation. But at that moment, the 5 of them were suddenly dumbfounded. Something is not right. When the transport fleet came into their field of view, the 5 of them realized that the amount of grain being transported was very small. Did they discover that we are lying in ambush and diverted some of their grains? Why do they have so few carriages? No, the leader shook his head. We have been in the Long Meng Army for 5 years. How would we not know about how they transport grains? Everyone is here, but they are lacking in carriages. He was right. Everyone was present, but what about the transport carriages? They had a massive amount of carriages. How had they all disappeared? "There's something strange," said someone suddenly. "Look." Everyone looked at the direction the person was looking in. They realized that the Long Meng Army was not using mules to pull the carriages. Instead, they simply lifted up the carriages and walked. What is this? We have been waiting in the Long Meng Army for 5 years. This is my first time seeing them carry transport carriages as they walk, someone sighed. There is something wrong. Although they could understand why the Long Meng Army carried the carriages as they walked, the scene in front of them was far too strange. The 5 scouts from the Black Feather Army would not believe that there had been no problems behind this. "Do we still attack?" someone asked in a low tone. The leader thought about it and said, Wait. Let me think about why they're doing that. Is it some sort of trap? But this trap is far too strange. The scouts from the Black Feather Army could not understand why these people had to carry the transport carriages. The Long Meng Army could not understand why an expert was blocking a small transport fleet like them either. It was not that the Long Meng Army wanted to carry the transport carriages. In reality, everyone thought that if it was the expert that they were thinking about, they might have dragged them underground along with the carriages. But after they lifted up the carriages, there were no more attacks. This felt like an animal experiment. If a monkey in a cage stretched out its hand to grab a banana, it would be electrocuted. It would acknowledge that it would be electrocuted if it tried to take the banana. Thus, it would not dare to take the banana. What could they do? They were in despair as well. The transport fleet is gone before we've understood what happened, one of the scouts from the Black Feather Army sighed. Wait, forget it. It's too strange. Disperse. The scouts from the Black Feather Army dispersed. They only had 5 people and were very strong. They only needed to deal a decisive strike. They could not do anything too risky. But at that moment, they suddenly felt massive pressure from the sky. Their leader shouted, a rank 1 from the North region. They saw the rank 1 raise his hand and exert pressure on the ground. A massive black hand fell from the sky. Fierce winds blew in the forest. The forest that they were in had been pressed down by the expert. The 5 Black Feather Army scouts lay on the ground, unable to move. They tried to struggle, but they were pressed down by the Black Hand. They could not even lift a finger. The person in the sky said in a cold voice, "Return everything you took. If you dared to steal grains from the Long Meng army, then you'd better be ready to beg for mercy." When the 5 scouts were thrown into a jail cell in Weibei Pass, an old man dressed in black robes came over. He looked at the imprisoned Black Feather Army scouts and said, "Tell me. Where did you hide our grain transport carriages that have disappeared?" The Black Feather Army scouts were full of fear. "Let me explain. We were just sitting on the tree this morning. Then, we saw the Long Meng army carry transport carriages and walk over. We didn't even have the time to react." The old man furrowed his eyebrows. How absolutely unrepentant. "Tell me. Where did our transport carriages go?" The Black Feather Army scout was about to burst into tears. They really did not steal their carriages. That night, the Long Meng army sent out a large amount of elites to search the area. They wanted to find soldiers from the Black Feather Army who had infiltrated their army. Back on King Lu Mountain, Lu Shu looked at the transport carriages, absolutely stupefied. "How much did you spend on these?" "I didn't spend anything." Lu Xiaoyu sounded very pleased with herself. "I didn't injure anyone either. Nothing happened. Everything is under control." Chapter 924, Give Me a Break. Lu Shu and Lu Xiaoyu did not know that almost 1/3 of the army was looking for the enemy that might be in the area. When the scouts from the Black Feather Army heard this news, they were very shocked. Thus, they decided to attack Weibei Pass first. The King Lu Mountain was still very lively. Over 5,000 people were gathered in a mountain, and a lot of smoke was produced. When it was time for lunch, the mountain was full of cheers and laughter. Although Lu Shu was in charge of military affairs, he did not prohibit the use of their free time. It was still very free. They only had to be serious about sleep, training, and cultural lessons. If they were not serious, they would have to suffer heavy consequences. Lu Shu advocated a balance between tension and relaxation. At first, he was worried that these people would be playful. But the results were not bad. The entire Wei Wu army advanced at a rapid pace. At first, when the Qingxai army first joined, they were not used to this. But the Wei Wu army warmed up quickly, and their commander, Lu Yizhao, was a loyal follower of Lu Shu. Thus, they eventually assimilated here. Zhang Weiyu then started to pass the techniques to them and help them break through the bottleneck like the Wei Wu army. Everyone remembered what Lu Yizhao had said. In the future, all of them would thank his decision. In reality, there were people who were already happy. The only safe thing in this world was their own strength. Furthermore, everyone understood that although the Wei Wu army was not very big, their average strength was almost on par with the Black Feather Army. Zhang Weiyu sighed. He said to himself, "Luckily, the Wei Wu army and the Qingxai army is small. If not, it will be hard to handle too many people. All the herbal medicine in a 50-meter radius have been pulled up. Their vital channels have finally stabilized, we can continue to train them." The herbal medicine on the mountain was finite. There would always be new growth, but the growth would not be able to catch up to the Wei Wu army's demand. Thus, 5,000 people was just nice. Any more and there would not be enough herbal medicine. After they were all used to carrying boulders while crossing the mountains, the overall explosive power and stamina the Wei Wu army possessed reached a new level. Zhang Weiyu laughed. Everyone thinks that just training techniques is good enough. But if they have not mastered their own bodies, how can they consider themselves able to fight? As long as they are willing to suffer, they will continue to break through the limits of their techniques. Originally, there were 52 teams with 60 people in each team. The number of teams had increased by 21, bringing the total number to 73. A competition started between the 73 teams. They compared the time they took to cross the mountains and competed to be the first to come back. Everyone was eager to compete. The Weiwu army, which had been like salt fish, suddenly turned into lions after they defeated the Qingxi army. No matter the difference in manpower, it was still the Qingxi army that they admired. But they won very easily. This was also what Lu Shu was doing now. For example, at rank 6, his celestial map was able to support 1,200 kilograms. Now that he was training his body again, if he was able to break free of the chains, this might reach 2,400 kilograms. He would be able to completely crush others who were of the same rank as him. But compared to the Weiwu army and the ordinary people, Lu Shu's training methods were even better. Earlier, Zhang Weiyu had tried to ask Lu Shu whether he could pass on his swordplay to the Weiwu army. But Lu Shu rejected as he did not have the permission from his teacher. Thus, Zhang Weiyu received new information that Lu Shu had a teacher. Zhang Weiyu started to imagine. If Lu Shu was this amazing, then how strong was Lu Shu's teacher? He did not know who exactly Lu Shu's teacher was, and whether they would be able to borrow their power in the future. Up to now, Zhang Weiyu had always thought about the day in the future that might happen and saved his strength. To him, no matter whether it was him or Lu Yizhao, they would eventually have to part ways with Lu Shu. Should he hint to Lu Shu and make him pledge allegiance to a great cause? Zhang Weiyu said to Lu Shu, "You have to understand that for this level of army, I am able to make them progress rapidly, but the other lords of heaven are able to do the same. Unless you are able to create an army like the Imperial Dragon Soldiers, there will be no future for them. Furthermore, the Imperial Dragon Soldiers are different. Even if there are only 50 Imperial Palace Soldiers and 5,000 Imperial Dragon Soldiers, the Lords of Heaven might not dare to take them head-on." Zhang Weiyu said this to make Lu Shu understand that the most impressive person in this world was the King of Gods. But Lu Shu thought, if he was able to exchange enough refresher fruit, would he be able to create an army of Imperial Dragon Soldiers? If what Zhang Weiyu had said was correct, and the Imperial Dragon Soldiers were that strong, Lu Shu had an idea. If I am able to become a Lord of Heaven, the entire region can only buy my soap, right? Even if someone else produces soap, they will not dare to sell it. Zhang Weiyu was speechless. From Zhang Weiyu's distress, plus 666. So your train of thought has jumped to becoming a Lord of Heaven? Furthermore, you want to sell soap while being the Lord of Heaven? Lu Shu cheerily looked on as Zhang Weiyu turned and walked away. He was always talking about useless things like this. Give me a break. Lu Shu would not give up on a big business like his soap industry. At that moment, the Black Feather Army finally started to attack Weibei Pass. There was immense power. The beating of the war drums caused the entire mountain range to tremble. Lu Xiaoyu and Lu Shu secretly went to the outskirts of the battlefield to take a look. He realized that the battle at the Tiger's Back, one of the greatest battles in the history of cultivation on Earth, was nothing compared to the battle in front of them. Practitioners died one by one. The fortress of the city slowly started to crack. The dark clouds overhead were very low. It was as if a storm would occur at any moment. The soldiers from the Black Feather Army were dressed in black armor. They climbed up the massive weapon used to destroy the city. They were not afraid of death. When they climbed up the wall, the people on the wall flew to them. Everyone was at their top speed. The strong would survive and the weak would die. So this was how a war in the realm of cultivation should be like. They have finally started fighting, said Lu Shu to Lu Yizhao when he returned to King Lu Mountain. Find the chief commander of Weiwu Army and tell him that the Weiwu Army will contain the Black Feather Army's reinforcements. I am not pretending to be polite. I genuinely want to help them contain the opposing forces. Yes, great lord. Lu Yizhao cupped his fist in the other hand and flew to Weibei Pass. It was the best chance to propose conditions. The commander at Weibei Pass would definitely want every bit of help he could get. Zhang Weiyu thought about it and asked, "Great Lord, are we bringing the Weiwu army into the war? You should think twice before making a decision. The Black Feather Army is far too strong. It is fine even if wait behind the scenes." Lu Shu shook his head. "We still have to fight." Zhang Weiyu was confused. He could not understand. Why? "Don't you feel that the Weiwu army is lacking in armor and weapons?" Lu Shu turned and asked. Zhang Weiyu gasped in shock. He already had his eyes on their armor and weapons? Chapter 925, Weiwu Army's Tactic is No Tactic. A great war started. The Black Feather Army and the Red Longmang Army began fighting in Weibei Pass. It looked like the battle between water and fire from the sky, a terrible conflict. Lu Yizhao went to Weibei Pass with his promise and exchanged it for the position of the commander of the Weiwu army. The commander of Weibei Pass felt that it was worth it as, after all, the Weiwu army had always been in a demoralized state, and it was worth giving them some hope so they could fight against the Black Feather Army. He wanted the entire Weiwu army to be killed by the Black Feather Army because if that was the case, he could earn a lot of money by making use of his position as the commander of the Longmang army. In fact, he did not need the Black Feather Army to kill Lu Shu as he would find a way to kill him. God knew where did this person come from, he had never heard of him. To him, Lu Shu was essentially seizing the position of the commander from him. This made him very gloomy. Meanwhile, Lu Shu also felt that he did not suffer any loss from this. He even thought that he could play around with the position of the commander if he managed to win at Weibei Pass. However, all these were secondary. Lu Shu felt that the most urgent matter was to help the Weiwu army dress up. When the Qingsai army arrived, they were fully equipped and properly dressed. However, the Weiwu army threw all their weapons and armor away as they ran for their lives. Now that they finally garnered some courage and aspirations, they realized that they had no F*King weapons. Therefore, Lu Shu felt that he should steal the weapons from the Black Feather Army. This may sound funny to the people in the North region. The Qingsai army had perished. The Longmang army of the Weibei Pass and the Red Flame army of the Liyang Pass were all living with scarce resources. When the elite armies were hiding, the Weiwu army wanted to steal from the Black Feather Army. Zhang Weiyu asked after being stunned, "Are you crazy?" "I am not," said Lu Shu. "I am just planning to pick up where I left off." "Did you forget what was my identity before I became the commander of the Weiwu army?" Zhang Weiyu replied cautiously, "Bandit chief of the Azure Dragon Village." "That's right, I need to live up to my name of a bandit. If I do not steal from the Black Feather Army when they passed by, I would lose face if the news spread in the future," said Lu Shu. "Can you not talk rubbish with me?" Zhang Weiyu rolled his eyes. From Zhang Weiyu's distress, plus 666. Zhang Weiyu thought that Lu Shu was crazy. Moreover, Zhang Weiyu discovered that Lu Shu was giving his army cultural lessons the day before he sent them to steal from the Black Feather Army. Lu Shu analyzed, "Think about our army's capability now. We have 2 rank 1, 21 rank 2, the rest are equally split amongst rank 3 and rank 4. Am I right?" "Yes," Zhang Weiyu said, even though soldiers from the Qingsai army had risen in position. "What about the Black Feather Army?" asked Lu Shu calmly. "How many armies does one commander lead?" "One commander leads 3,000, half of them are rank 5 and the rest are." "Are they as powerful as us?" asked Lu Shu. "I don't think so," sighed Zhang Weiyu. However, one could not calculate the strength of the army in this manner. None of the soldiers in the Qingsai army had the training of battle tactics. "Take it slow," Lu Shu comforted Zhang Weiyu after patting his shoulders. "We are not directly going against the Black Feather Army. Moreover, even if we are to steal from them, we have to wait for the next group of people to upgrade their skills. I know what you are worried about, but if they are powerful enough, Weiwu army's tactic would be to have no tactic." After Lu Shu comforted him, Zhang Weiyu became more worried. He would not need any tactics if he was with the Imperial Dragon soldiers. The vital channels of the entire Weiwu army were developing as the days passed. The oil from the herbal medicine were depleting very quickly. By training with this group of people, Zhang Weiyu had to move to a different hill every day. One was to harvest all the herbal medicine on the mountain and one was to hunt the beasts on the mountain. Initially, it was very peaceful. However, the arrival of the group of bandits caused chaos as they hunted the beasts. After the day's training, a group of people moaned in pain at the foot of the mountain. Then, after a night of sitting in meditation, they became revitalized. Gradually, everyone got used to the intensive training. In fact, as their vital channels became more developed and stable, Zhang Weiyu wanted to increase the intensity of the training. Lu Shu was very impressed by Zhang Weiyu and the rest. In the night, they had to take turns to cook the herbs and the temperature used must be taken care of. In the day, they had to conduct cultural lessons and trainings and could only sleep during the short breaks. Yet Zhang Weiyu, Dong Yi, and the rest remained passionate. It felt as though they were happy because the army improved. Initially, Li Haitan and the rest did not like Zhang Weiyu and the rest. After all, they thought that it was odd for a group of ordinary people to train practitioners. However, their respect for Zhang Weiyu and the rest grew as the days passed. Lu Shu was very happy recently. His speed of training increased and his distress points was accumulating. The progress of cultural lessons was also great. Lu Xiaoyu surprised him too. After Lu Xiaoyu snatched the food, Wei Bei Pass began to control the supplies given to each soldier. When the soldiers realized that their portion of food was decreasing as the days passed, they supplied a huge sum of distress points. In fact, Lu Shu did not expect the stealing of food to bring so much benefits. He was tempted to ask Lu Xiaoyu to burn the Longmeng army's food storage place again. However, he could not do that as the Longmeng army were defending against the Black Feather army. Once the Longmeng army was defeated, the Black Feather army would have sufficient energy to look for the missing Qingsai army in the mountains. As the Black Feather army and the Longmeng army were fighting with all their might, the situation at the Qinglu mountain was relatively calm and peaceful, as though everyone was holding back their powers. Lu Yizhao returned with a slip of instructions. Now that Lu Shu had officially assumed the position as the commander of the Weiwu army, he could finally write the letter of recommendation for the selection to enter the sword hut. Lu Shu was slightly curious too. The sword hut seemed to be an extraordinary place. According to legends, even if the entire world was in chaos, they would not grant the candidates any time to slack off. Those who had experience in the selection day of the sword hut went to the palace with their luggage. The commanders of the armies also did not care and supported them instead. If the legendary person of the sword hut appeared in their army, when the opponent prospered in the future, they would have to help him no matter what. It was a high-risk investment and the outcome of failing would only be the loss of a soldier. Everyone could settle this. It was almost 6 months to the selection of the sword hut, which would be held during the cold winter.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, and we just putting on the show. Try to look to the heavens to tell us things